Three, two, one, go.
Good morning, Garrett. How are you?
Morning, Joe. How is things going in your world?
Good, man. Good.
I learned
Just
that I learned a cup of my normal size coffee cup. It's about this big. Fills up 3/4 of this, and it was kind of disheartening. It's kind of like the bag of chips when you open up the bag of chips and a bunch of air in there. Yeah,
yeah,
I thought my bigger coffee cup would hold more coffee. It's very dissatisfying.
yeah. I've run it. So we use mostly this Keurig coffee
Mm-hmm.
maker in our
Yep.
kitchen, and it's got like I don't know what size, large, medium, small,
Yep.
venti, whatever
Minty.
um, sizes on there. So I always hit the big one, and it only fills this coffee mug, which I don't know if you need if you can get perspective.
I gotcha.
That's how big it is. And it only fills this thing up like 3/4 of the way.
Yep.
And I mean, it's handy. It's nice. I can just put a little cup in there. I don't have to deal with the whole filter and grounds and everything. But it is a little disheartening when I go back to it. And it's like, I guess maybe it's leaving room for cream or something. I don't know.
I don't know why people need cream in coffee, but that's a debate altogether in itself. Um, so how is everything going on your end? As far I know, you're down there in Texas. I'm up here in Illinois where it's cold as shit. Um, how is the weather down there going?
So I've acclimated pretty well to it, I think.
Yeah.
So in the summer times, I still feel like I'm dying, right? So
Okay.
I work outside, and it'll be 110, 100% humidity. Like it's never not 100% humidity here because we're so close to the bay.
Right.
But right now it's 61 degrees outside, and I'm contemplating putting on a sweatshirt.
It's all right. My house is set to 68, and I have a sweatshirt on, so I think that's probably about right.
Yeah.
So this is our Sunday morning podcast, our first episode for anybody who's tuning in new. This is going to be kind of the theme of how we're going to go through this. We're just going to have a conversation about whatever and whenever. And if you guys would like, please hit the subscribe bell and the notify bell down here in the corner. I think it's down here. And leave a comment with something you want us to talk about. If you guys, I'm going to say the same kind of thing pretty much every episode. If you guys have something you want us to talk about or questions, I will leave a link to all my socials. Hit me on Twitter or Instagram. Just message me questions you guys might have and want to hear us talk about. This is our opinion. We're two mid-20 something guys that have lived a lot of life in different aspects. And I think we bring a lot to the table as far as life lessons and things we've learned. And if you want to hear our opinion on it, please leave it in comments below. We'd love to give you guys our feedback or answer any questions you guys may have.
For sure. There's going to be a few things like I don't know if it'll come to this, but if people bring up like political topics to talk about, I personally am going to do my best to keep a pretty biased point of view because I don't really want to get into like my personal beliefs about it because that's not that's not really what we're going for here. Is I don't want to be preaching one way or the other.
Right.
And the same thing for maybe religious or any other kind of topics like that. I'm gonna do the best that I can to stay pretty biased. But if it's fact related topics, then I'll give you my opinion all day long.
And I think that's the other thing, guys. If you're leaving comments and stuff like that, that's fine. Ask us questions or whatever question you want. We might, for the sake of the show, just say like, "Hey, we might DM you a message back or something like that." What we would say, just for the sake of keeping this a pretty neutral kind of place where people can come hang out, listen to a conversation, and I will do better about keeping it very in the middle for myself. But this could be a conversation about gaming, could be about farming, could be about anything you got that you guys want to talk about. Come here and join our kind of conversation that we're having. These are the kind of conversations me and him have all the time. And we decided that we should put it into a podcast and see how many others would like to join in the conversation. Leadership definitely would be, if you guys have any leadership questions or work scenario questions. I know this guy has led many, many men over his short lifespan. And I have worked with a lot of different people in different companies. If you guys have trade questions or getting into the union, we're both in the union. Ask those questions. I mean, this is going to be a podcast for anybody. If you want to show up and hang out, hang out. If you want to, we're going to put chapters in here. So it'll say intro, this topic. I will go through and put chapters in so you can skip to the part you want. Hopefully you stay for the whole thing, but nice mullet. So anyway, first topic of today, we're gonna kind of do a recap of 2020. Like this is a semi-long list, but we're just gonna go with it and see where it takes us.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read the whole thing. I found myself down this rabbit hole this morning. So the rabbit hole topics began, you know.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely, guys, and we're gonna figure this out. The quality of this podcast is gonna only get better with your guys' input and us learning too. And we've been doing the video social media space for about 4 months now. We're branching off into this because this is more of a personal thing where you guys can connect with us and get to know us, not just through a screen or through gaming or something like that. But yeah, and actually, Joe, why don't you tell them where we came up with a name for the gaming channel? That would probably be a good start for a 2020 recap. Way.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Hang on one second. Let
So
me
the
let me
logo
pull.
right here. Yeah, you're good. The logo right here in the middle between our two screens is actually our gaming company logo. It's gonna be more than a gaming company, but it's the company's name is TYR Logic Gaming right now, and that's our logo that we were able to make and come up with, and it's also my wife painted it for me for a Christmas present, hanging behind me there. Um, it's we're learning all this new stuff. It's gonna be a fun time, for sure. Glad that the logo looks as cool as it does.
So TYR Logic. I myself and I know Garrett has always been fascinated with like Norse mythology and all the and going way back into that and all the stories and all that. We both get real sucked up into all of that stuff. So we started our well, it's mostly Garrett's streaming channel where we play games and I kind of co-host that. And so we're looking for some kind of a good name, and I was down a rabbit hole and reading on this Norse mythology and everything, and found Tyr, which was one of one of the sons of Odin.
Yeah, he was actually ended up being more powerful than Odin.
Yeah.
He was the one to keep Odin in line. And we might have a little bit off on that, guys. If you're big Norse mythology people, you're probably more developed than we are. That's fine. We're going off of what we know and understand. But Tyr, to my knowledge, was the Norse god of justice and war. More so justice in war than justice and war. That was a distinction I had to learn.
Mm.
So like
So
if you
he's known as being a god of war, and but more specifically the god of justice, but that doesn't necessarily mean justice like in the sense that we talk about justice today, like good versus evil. It's more like logic, not necessarily right and wrong or good and bad, but like the god of logical decisions and whatnot. It says his primary role was a upholder of law and justice. So kind of both. But I was fascinated with what his whole role stood for and everything like that, where it wasn't necessarily good versus evil or right and wrong, but it was kind of right and wrong, but it was law and justice, and he was a god of war. So he's a very powerful um, god, and I've always been logic driven to where I read into things on a very logical level, not just like what I believe or what I think is happening, but like to look at what's going on and how things are unfolding, and then figure out a solution that way. And so that's kind of how we came up with the name. Is it's just some guy that we thought was pretty cool, and we ran with it.
and the logo itself is a Tyr logo, but since it's a religious symbol, it's not copyrighted. And so I took a lot of the symbol itself out. There's more to the symbol; it branches further out than what you see right next to me. But I summed it down into that. Tyr's actual logo itself is the actual point, like the Spartans use on their shields, and then the rest of that is an offshoot of like his actual like job and title, somewhat as far as I understand. But basically, it looks really awesome, and it's really something that we identify with on the gaming channel and on our company logo and stuff like that. And I enjoy it. It's this process of finding and getting the name for this was really all Joe. But the best part about it for me was I learned how to do graphic design. I learned how to do like video editing and photo editing to make the logo look that way. And that's kind of something else, guys. If you're interested in this space, we just started this like 4 months ago, and we're here, and we're gonna keep growing now. I mean, we're making huge progress. Joe isn't just featured on the stream; he's the co-host. He's there on pretty much every stream, unless he's working. So definitely, if you guys enjoy this, definitely tune into the stream too. Let's see what else. What do you want? What do you want to go with first?
Well, we can roll straight into this recap and see what happens after that.
Do it.
So the first thing that this thing is talking about. Hang on. Yeah, wait, wait.
Captain.
So January 3rd was when we did a drone strike and killed the Iran general Qassem Soleimani.
Okay.
And that's pretty important because the Iran put out a statement that said America will pay. So everybody was really afraid of like a counterattack or something or another terrorist attack. So that happened all the way back in January.
Yeah, it was over. Yeah, definitely over a year ago for sure. We're filming
And
this
then,
on 124.
Yeah, and then right after that was when they tried to impeach Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And then it died down. But like I didn't realize all that shit was so long ago. Like there's some things in here that is like, damn, I feel like that was 2 months ago. Right. And there's other things in here I was like, I thought that was like 3 years ago.
Well, let's just hit the nail on the head now and say that this whole year length has either felt longer or shorter for some people due to COVID. And I mean, we're not going to talk about COVID in depth on this podcast because I'm sick and tired of hearing of COVID. And your opinion and beliefs are fine. Whoever's watching this, that's fine. But this is going to be a podcast about everything other than that. But I mean, this year has gone by very quickly from the time of like the news coming in about different stuff and people out of work. I was out of work for 2 weeks. You were pretty much busy the whole time, I think.
Yeah, I got quarantined once for 2 weeks, and that happened to be right over Christmas. So,
that's a shitty time to be quarantined.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but I'm all the way down here, so
yeah.
Away from and everything.
So that drone strike itself was crucial because what I'm getting at, you're the military expert in the room, was more for the fact of we were worried about a counterstrike, or was it just that important of a assault?
So I can't remember exactly what it was about. It was just this was the first thing on this timeline that happened the third day of 2020.
Yeah.
And it was just a big thing because everybody was worried about like a 9/11 2.0.
Gotcha. The first time we actually came in right out the gate. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Yeah. So then Trump tried to get impeached.
Yeah.
Or they tried to impeach Trump.
That failed. I remember.
Yeah. And then this one I thought was years ago. Okay. UK left the European Union. Okay.
Wow. Okay. That's UK left the European Union, as in like the whole. I guess you have to educate me on the whole European Union thing. I'm not as fast in knowledge over there, but basically the whole. So like, if you talk Spain, France, all them.
Yeah, if you look at Europe, you've got like Germany, all those places.
Mm-hmm.
They are a European Union.
Okay.
So where they're separate countries, but they kind of like. It's as if like you took a bunch of states and they weren't a country, they were individual countries, but they created a American Union.
Okay.
Where they work together, and it's like you don't need a passport to go between those countries.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they're part of the same European Union, but the UK left the European Union.
Did it say why?
No, it's just a recap on it. And I can't remember. I didn't dig too far into it when it happened. I just remember it was a big deal because there was people that lived in like neighboring countries but worked in the UK, and then now they have to
That probably
because like I don't think people really understand how small those countries are.
yeah, Ireland's the size of Indiana, for the record.
Yeah, like
Anybody's watching
you
from the
can
United
do a
States.
road trip there and drive for 6 hours, and you've gone through 4 different countries.
Yeah, the other part to that too, guys, is in the United States. If you're watching this in another country, where I live and where he lives now, we lived in the same town. We drove him to his new location. It takes 15 hours for us to get from where I am to where he is, and we're still in the United States. We're covered like 7 states, and 6 of those hours was in Texas. But Texas is huge, by the way. Anybody
Yeah, so I lived.
know?
Quick story on how big Texas is. Well, 2 stories actually. Is when Garrett and I moved all my stuff down here. I live right around Houston, so southeast Texas, and we drove from central Illinois, and we hit Texarkana, which is the state line between Arkansas and it's the middle of the night, and Garrett says, "Oh man, we're in Texas already. We're almost there." And I was like, "Oh man, we're like halfway there." So half of this like 15-hour drive was all in Texas. And then the other story is I went to Lyman College. I went to Northwest Lyman College up in Denton, Texas, which for those of you that don't know, it's about 45 minutes north of Dallas. So it's definitely considered northern Texas.
Yes.
And I went on a road trip when I was there to visit one of my Army buddies up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is like, I think it's like 45 minutes away from Denver or something like that. Maybe I got that wrong. I can't remember. There's a big city over there that's close to. But it was like a 10-hour drive. And the halfway point between northern Texas and Colorado Springs, Colorado, is in Texas. It's Amarillo.
Wow.
And that blew my mind. And that's with like these 2-lane highway back roads in Texas where the speed limit's 75 miles an hour. That's just hauling ass for 10 hours, and the halfway point is still inside Texas. Blew my mind.
That is nuts.
So anyway,
I mean, that is crazy how long it takes, for sure.
Yeah. We had all those bushfires that destroyed Australia.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I mean, I remember everybody getting behind that, kind of just being like, "Hey, let's go support Australia." Like a bunch of stuff went down with that for sure.
Yeah,
like
100%. I remember there was a bunch of like American firefighters and everything going and volunteering over there and everything.
Yes, there was, and that was big.
That's pour water bottles on koalas.
I do remember that. I do remember the koalas was a big deal. Let's see what else.
I learned something about koalas the other day.
Yeah, what was that?
They are chronically dehydrated because they don't drink water. They get all of their water from leaves and stuff, and then they have a smooth brain. Apparently,
what is that? I've heard that as a negative term before. What does that actually mean?
I've 100% called you a smooth brain dink before.
Yeah, I remember that. I've heard that.
So our brains are rigid, right?
Yeah.
You know the purpose?
So that it has more surface area?
Yeah, so it's 100%. So it's more surface area. They can spread it out and cover. So if somebody's a smooth brain, it means they don't have much brain power going on. But eucalyptus leaves are toxic to koalas. But that's like their favorite thing. That's like their favorite thing to eat. So they're smooth brains, so they're not that smart. So they just poison themselves like every day, eating eucalyptus leaves. And they have to eat something else with it to be able to digest it. I don't know. That's what my wife was telling me.
Okay. Now I understand the smooth brain dink comment. Yes.
Yep. But I was thinking about this. So if a koala is a smooth brain, right, and they're not very smart, they poison themselves with their diet, which we do too.
Yeah.
Junk food and all that stuff. We definitely do as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But we only use like 10. There's the argument we don't use only 10% of our brain. We have a wrinkly brain. But
yeah.
What if you just smooth it out? Then we use 100% or what?
I think that goes on to that comment about the people that only use. So if anybody doesn't know this, you only use a portion of your actual strength and brain power. That's because the Joe was telling me this once, is that if you actually used your full potential for brain power and muscle, you would tear the ever living hell out of your body. Like tendons would snap, bones would break. Like you hear moms lifting kids off from underneath cars because you only use about 10 to 15% of your actual strength. So if you think like, and so I had an experience once when I was in, I think we were just out of high school, and we were trying to pull a car out of a shed. Joe wasn't there, but I told him about it. We had a buddy who was pretty strong. I mean, he's a big guy, 6'2", 300 pounds. I mean, he's a big guy. It was a John Deere 300 tractor, and if you guys don't know what that is, it's a old piece of shit tractor. But it had a bucket on the front, and we were pulling a car out. Well, the guy who was running it, jumped off and didn't put it in park, and I was caught between the bucket and this El Camino, and there was no way I was coming out of that. It was in drive, and it had the bucket. Obviously, if you've never seen a tractor bucket, Google it. It's got a sharp blade on the front. It was aimed right for my thighs. And at that moment, there was only about this much room between the car and me, and I was in the middle hooking up a chain, so I was pretty much screwed, and I knew it. I watched a full-grown guy grab a tractor that was in drive and push it backwards to the point where the wheels rolled backwards while it was in gear, because the look on my face said, I'm dead. And the look on his face said, shit, he's dead. And so he grabbed the tractor, and I jumped out, and I just sat there, and I was amazed, first off, that he could do it, but he had to take a break, too, because what happens is when those kind of situations happen, your adrenal gland kicks off, and you can do amazing things, but the after effect is terrible. Yeah. I'm just letting you know right now, from personal experience. If you guys don't know, it's in my bio. I've been a firefighter for almost a decade now. And the high you get from doing those high adrenaline things is awesome, but the crash is absolutely terrible. I don't recommend it. I mean, I do recommend do what you want, but I mean, the adrenaline crashes are not my favorite thing on the planet ever. I mean, Joe, you can speak to this too.
Yeah, there's you can look up a million stories about this. There's stories about moms lifting cars off of kids, or I remember seeing a video of this big dude. There was a helicopter crash, and somebody in the helicopter ended up underneath it or whatever. He picked the whole thing up. I mean, obviously he didn't lift, but he like lifted the edge up, and people were able to pull this guy out. It's like, that's unreal. Mm-hmm. But it's like Garrett was saying, is it destroys your body. So the school of thought is that you only use about a third of your strength. So if you want to use that literally, if you can bench press 300 pounds in, an extreme situation, you would be able to press 900 pounds. That's the rough school of math on it. But as you can imagine, if you can bench press 300 pounds, after you do that, like that's your max. After you do that, you're sore, your shoulders hurt, your pecs are tight, all that kind of stuff. Imagine doing 3 times as much, one time, as explosive as you possibly can.
Yep.
You're probably gonna, you're gonna tear a rotator cuff, you might tear a bicep, or you're gonna tear some stuff up. But there's stories about people running from a wildfire, and they're able to take off and run as fast as a horse, or take off as a horse. Maybe not reach the same top speed, but
I mean, and I can speak from personal experience. I mean, there's times when I've been on certain calls where I'm able to go for, one night we had, I think I told you, we had 4 fires in one night. I had started my shift, basically, I'm not a full-time firefighter, I'm a volunteer, but I started going around 11 o'clock at night, and I left the station the next morning at 8, and I think I told you I had 4 different fires that night, and I didn't stop once. And then I was awake, I was ready to go. I walked into my house, I slept for the next 16 hours. I was out. I texted him and said, I'm out. Later, dude. He's like, what happened? I was like, crash. That's all I had to send him was crash. And he's like, all right, talk to you tomorrow. It was a Sunday. I was out till Monday morning when I had to go to work, but I was exhausted. I felt great during it. That's the trick your body plays on you. You feel great while you're doing it. And then your body's like, oh, by the way, here's this.
Yeah. Which is a good thing. Which is a good thing. Because your body gives you what you need when you need it. There's right. I've got countless stories of just being purely 100% exhausted. So for everybody that doesn't know, I was in the military, right? I was in the military for 4 years.
Look behind him. You can see our
so there's my accolades. Basic training picture. There's my grandpa's basic training picture, and that's a picture of me getting an award on my first deployment over there.
This is kind of the same thing behind me. Just not basic training, but fire department, whole fire department, 4 fires.
But I've got countless stories of just being 100% exhausted, and then something happens, and magically I'm at 100%. And I'm running faster than I ever have in my entire life. And I was pretty fast in high school. Since then, I've slowed down a lot.
Fastest white kid in our high school. Proven fact.
Yeah, but adrenaline's a great thing. But then afterwards, the dump is pretty harsh. You feel like you're borderline going into a coma.
Oh yeah, and the thing that also me and Joe talk about this all the time is there's a price to everything. I don't know if some of you are new to the podcast world or new to life in general and you're younger and you're listening to this, just remember there's always a cost. Always a cost. It may be a positive one too. It could be a negative, but everything you do has a cost. It's a choice. So remember that part of this too, because that's something that me and him had to learn the hard way multiple times. And that's okay, because that's part of life and that's a good thing to learn. But so koalas are smooth brain. What else you got for me?
Yeah. Okay. We'll bring this back around. Yeah. So the next thing ever happened after that was in January is when they first started talking about this mysterious disease brewing up in China.
Okay.
In January of last year is when they first started talking about it. Now, I know there's a whole bunch of different beliefs about coronavirus. We could talk about it, until we're blue in the face. But realistically, the only thing we're doing, and I've heard other people talking about this in podcasts and whatnot, and they say, like, the only thing we're doing now is Monday morning quarterbacking.
Yeah.
So we can look back over the last year and be like, hey, why didn't we do this? They're like, well, January of last year, how much did you know about coronavirus?
Nothing. I heard a virus, and I thought it was just something that.
Exactly. And so the scientists and the world leaders and everybody in all these different countries, including America, were trying to make decisions about the best way to protect the American people when they had virtually no information at all. I know a bunch of people were upset about the shutdown and everything like that. But it's like, if you have no information about a situation, but you have to do the best that you can, especially like a disease, like, what are you going to do? Keep people away from each other. Well, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
You can't tell people, like, no, you can't go outside.
Yeah.
Like, obviously there was a shutdown. They told people don't go outside, whatever, but there weren't cops rolling around arresting you or writing tickets for being outside, so that's just.
So that's what the start of it was in January.
We won't get too far into that.
But yeah, that's when that started happening, and everybody started freaking out a little bit, and everybody getting nervous. I remember that. I was there. It started kicking off really big. I'm going to jump ahead to March to kind of get us going down the calendar, but I know in March is when I got the job shut down on my end. So I know there's some stuff that happened between January and March, but right around March is when it actually really hit where I was at.
So in February, the first week of February, Donald Trump was acquitted of all his alleged crimes, but that's as good as the news gets.
Okay.
Right after that is when Kobe Bryant and his daughter died in that helicopter crash.
That was something big. That hit everybody, I think, like a lead brick, because everything was going on in China with the disease or wherever the disease. But anyway, big part was in China, and then Kobe Bryant dies. And it's like, wait, what? The guy who was on top of the world, as far as I could tell, he was a decent guy. I'm not going to speak to his character, but I never had any problems with the guy. I never had any things where I stood out to me. But then it comes out, I'm eating dinner with my family at a pizza joint, and all of a sudden I find out Kobe Bryant's dead. I'm like, what is going on? Because this guy's been around in basketball since we were kids.
And I'm not a huge basketball guy, but
neither am I. I actually hate the sport, but that's beside the point. It's because I'm short, guys, if you didn't know.
Okay, yeah. So Kobe Bryant died. Kobe Bryant and his daughter. So I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that his daughter died also. I thought it was just him.
Oh, okay.
But him and his daughter died in a helicopter crash. That's another thing that I felt like was a couple of years ago. I didn't know that was last year.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. That was a kind of big thing for the news that day. I mean, everybody was making a big deal about it, and they should have. I mean, the guy he changed the way people looked at basketball, as far as I could tell.
After that, the word of coronavirus started spreading as fast as the actual disease. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now we're into March.
Okay. March is when I got laid off, or not laid off, but sent home for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it says the world went into mass hysteria because some guy in China ate a bat. So I guess that's how it started. Some guy ate a bat and got the coronavirus.
Ozzy Osbourne did that at a concert. Nobody cared. I mean, people care because they still talk about it, but I mean, come on now.
Right. So that's when it really started kicking off.
Right.
By the end of the month, our worst fears were confirmed. We're in the midst of a global pandemic. So here's actually an interesting fact. Do you know the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic?
You told me this once, but I can't remember. My brain is...
So an epidemic affects like one demographic, you know.
Okay.
So if it's a disease that only affects Black people, or it's
like
a disease
okay.
Yeah, or a disease that only affects people in third world countries.
Gotcha.
Or only affects any kind of a demographic you can think of, like region where you live, race. You could even do sexual orientation if you want to go back to AIDS, when it was rampant within homosexuals way back in the day.
Yep.
That could have been considered an epidemic, but a pandemic is not biased towards any
specific thing,
anything at all. So it affects everybody equally. So there's people in third world countries get it. There's people in first world countries that get it. There's all races, all genders, everybody gets it.
Yep.
So that's the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic. I didn't know that, but
I didn't know that either until you told me. I was like, okay, cool. I don't know any of that, but that's interesting. And
I thought those two words were synonymous for a long time.
Yeah.
So then we're in April. Everything's starting to get locked down.
What were you doing in April? We doing anything in April? We were just doing. You'd already moved down there. We didn't have anything going in our world. I don't think anything crazy was going on in April.
I was heavy into my apprenticeship in April.
Oh, I was going back to work in April. I remember that part. I went back to work.
At first, the lockdowns, I really enjoyed the lockdowns at first.
What, nobody out? Yeah, because you could drive everywhere and go the speed limit or go over the speed limit.
Well,
I remember that.
I'm a homebody, right? So I don't go out much. I don't go to bars. I don't go to clubs, that kind of stuff. Thank you, Morgan.
It's amazing. She's talented at her trade. By the way, Morgan is a blue Doberman, and she has canine teeth that can chew through metal and bricks and all those sorts of other things. We'll have to feature her one of these times.
This is the most recent thing she's brought me out of my backyard.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, but anyway, so I'm a homebody. I don't go out much. I don't do a lot of things. I'd rather stay at home. But the only thing that I really noticed with the original shutdown is, I was commuting from just south of Houston. Is that too loud? So April, they did the first big shutdown in Houston, and so like I was at this point, I'm living south of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Rocher in Texas, if anybody's familiar, if they watch this. And I was commuting to like the middle of Houston. And if you can imagine, Houston is like the fourth largest city in America or something like that. Yep. The traffic here is terrible. There's no way to describe it other than terrible. And when they shut down, the amount of traffic dropped by like 75%.
I can't imagine.
Instead of in the morning where I'm like, okay, I got to leave. It'll take me 20 minutes to drive there, but I got to leave an hour early because I'm probably going to hit traffic. There's probably going to be a wreck. Yeah. And I'm going to have to sit in it, right? And that happened like every day. And so that's what I was doing. And I remember I would leave my house an hour before I needed to get to where I was working at.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would get there like 10 minutes early.
Okay.
15 minutes early, something like that. And then the day that they shut everything down, I left my house an hour early like I usually do. And I got to work like 45 minutes early.
Yeah, I remember.
What?
I live in a small town in Illinois. Me and him grew up in. And the funny thing about it is when everything got shut down is I was off work. I was told to quarantine at home. So my buddy bought a water treatment building that needed all the piping cut out in it. We're talking like 6 inch stuff. And if you guys don't know this already, I'm a pipe fitter, plumber, welder, or attempting to be a welder. And so all this stuff was meant for the water treatment plant in the old town, but they built a new one. So he bought it and he wanted some help tearing stuff out. And I was like, well, I'm at home for 2 weeks and he's not going to be any trouble, and I'm already at home, so I might as well go help him. Leaving the house and seeing nobody moving in town and the Casey's still open was impressive. Because, I mean, regardless of getting into leaving the house, not leaving the house, this is all, like he said, Monday morning quarterbacking, but going to Casey's was nice. Like, driving through town, didn't have to wait on anybody. I mean, I'm in a small town. I mean, it's not like Houston. It is, like, maybe 16,000 people. Like, so there's not a ton of people here. But It was interesting to be able to just go anywhere and do whatever you wanted and not have to like deal with anybody or deal with traffic. And I mean, we have a decent amount of traffic in our town, I think, but it wasn't anything like a big city would be.
Yeah.
So
the traffic dropped by like 75%. And, you know, like it was every morning that there was a wreck somewhere, you know, and it didn't even have to be on like the road that you were on. If it was on another road, people would get onto that road to get around it. And then that would back traffic up. So where, you know, like an interchange usually had like an entrance ramp from one highway to another usually has, I don't know how they measure it. Let's say 20 cars in 10 minutes.
Right.
Something like that. Now it's trying to handle like 100 cars in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's going to get backed up. And then people are going to start going around that and start going through neighborhoods. And then you got all these stop signs and those are getting backed up, you know, and so it's just a domino.
Yeah.
And
terrible.
I remember when the traffic dropped off, it was just like I drove to work and it was like the only time I had to hit my brakes was at like a red light when I was like, and that's unheard of, you know, here, like.
Yeah.
So after that big shutdown, that's when the phrase social distancing was coined.
Okay.
But it doesn't really mean that people were following it. So social distancing, you know, 6 feet apart, whatever. I don't think at that point we were really to face coverings yet.
No, because in Illinois, I'll speak to this. In Illinois, this is just an Illinois plug, I guess. But in Illinois, for the 2 weeks that we were shut down or quarantined or whatever you want to call it, and they shut the state down, nobody was wearing masks, by the way. Like, there was nobody out in public. Actually, I lied. I'm sorry. I said that story backwards. There were people wearing masks, but they said not to get masks because they needed them for the nurses. And that's fine. You believe what you want to believe. After that, they made it mandated in Illinois to wear a mask. Nobody wore a mask. Like, nobody. And the reason behind that was in Illinois.
That's rural Illinois.
That's rural Illinois. It's not Chicago, guys. We're talking rural Illinois. Sorry, I should preface that. And this is just, I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just telling you what happened. In rural Illinois, when the government says you need to do X, and if it's somewhat infringent on what they think is their freedoms, they're going to fight back. As far as fight back, they're going to, like, I say not protest, but like it's a really bad name nowadays. But like their own personal belief of, I'm not going to do this because you told me to. I'm going to do it because I want to, kind of thing. And
right.
that in itself was pretty funny for me to watch just in general. And then, I mean, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole what the state did, but anyway, that was the American people of rural Illinois is like, oh, I'll wear a mask. No, you tell me to. Okay, no, I'm not. That's the logic there, I guess. So
yeah,
anyway,
that was before face coverings and everything, and nobody wore them here. So our company gave us face masks. They gave us FR face masks. You know, fire retardant face masks.
That's got to be terrible.
Which, I mean, it is what it is. But the thought processing behind it didn't make any sense to me.
Right.
So they gave us a face mask, which, sure, you know, like we're going to be in close proximity to everybody. You know, on a day-to-day basis, you have to deal with customers. You know, I for those of you that don't know from my story about going to lineman college, I am a lineman apprentice right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may be at somebody's house dealing with, you know, they got port service or blinking lights at their house, you know, so you got to deal with them face to face. So it makes sense. But I spent most of my time on a big crew, which is like handling, you know, a car hit a pole, we're changing this pole out, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And if you're around these guys, you're around like the same 4 guys every day. So it's not really that big of a deal. And the closest guy you get with is, you know, the guy you're riding in the truck with.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's not really that big of a deal. But
right.
if you want to wear a face mask, wear a face mask. But the FR part is what doesn't make sense to me. So the only
Yeah.
time you need to wear FR apparel is when you're dealing with like the high voltage and everything like that. So like we
Right.
have 7200, 12470 or 199, 345 on most of our circuits, right?
Yeah.
If I'm up in a bucket or I climb a pole and I'm 50, 60 feet off the ground,
Yeah.
if somebody's standing directly below me, I'm 50 or 60 feet away from them.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not wearing a face mask.
Yeah, for sure.
So then what's the purpose of wearing a FR face mask? You know, it's whatever. Yeah. It's,
But that was
hindsight being what it is, it didn't make any sense. But they gave us these and nobody wore them. You know,
right.
And we'd go out to eat or go grab lunch or whatever, and there weren't signs on doors that said face coverings mandatory.
Yep.
I think there was a handful, maybe, but nobody. I can remember going to Home Depot and seeing like one guy.
Yeah.
And he was wearing like a carpenter mask, you know. It wasn't even like
and that's that's the thing, is like the like I said, the people do what they're gonna do, and I mean this was all a progression, and it just progressed pretty quickly. I know in April I started up at a job up north of me about 45 minutes, and it was that whole town had nothing to do with any of that. They didn't put any signs up, they didn't do any of that stuff.
Okay, so the next thing after that was the death of Breonna Taylor.
Yep. Okay, I kind of remember that.
Closely after that was George Floyd.
Okay.
And
boy, we're just hitting all the big stuff.
That's what it is, man. It's just a recap. And I can remember George Floyd going off, and that was a big deal with all the protests and everything.
Yeah. There was one coming up, and that current events is probably going to come up too. That Dad interviewed the police chief in that town. He didn't get the job, thankfully, as far as like the protesting and all that stuff going on. He didn't.
Right. Yeah. I remember that.
This stuff, I mean, that stuff is. It kind of is what it is, and that's kind of a. Yeah. I hate to say it that way, but that's just a recap.
I don't want to get too involved into discussing all that. It gets too political. It gets too.
It's just a recap, guys. We're just doing a recap real quick, and we're finding stuff that we want to talk about out of it.
Then it says the world lit up in anger with many taking to the streets and protesting against treatment of black citizens.
Okay.
Clash between protesters and police officers saw multiple deaths across the country. Dog licks his paws. Oh, that's just an ad. I was like, what?
Dog licks paws?
Yeah, it's a dog licks his paws. Top vet says to do this. Okay.
Hey, you need that for your dog.
You need to read that. I need to read that, actually.
Yeah, you do need to read that for your dog. If anybody doesn't know, Joe has a all-white German Shepherd, one of the prettiest dogs I've ever seen in my life. He's pretty smart, too. He might jump up on screen one of these times. We'll have to do a feature. I have an all-black German Shepherd. That dog is stupid.
Smooth brain.
But anyway, we have dogs, and his dog has a problem with licking his feet. And so Joe has been known to put different articles of clothing on his dog to get them to stop doing something, which is actually a really good thing. I have a photo on my phone. If I can find it, it'll be on the next podcast. But he put pants on his German Shepherd. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah, I put some gym shorts on him because he just got neutered, and so he wouldn't leave his stitches alone. And the cone, what was it? Or something? Oh, the cone wasn't big enough. Yeah, like the biggest cone that they had at this place, and his neck was long enough that he could reach around and still kind of.
So, you guys who don't know, Captain he is from a breeder in Texas, but he is also the thickest German Shepherd I've ever seen. Not fat. I mean, like legitimately long hair, white German Shepherd, thick. He's a big boy. Like his head is massive, but his body's even bigger. Like you pet this dog, and you like sounds like a bass drum.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead. What's in June or May? Whatever.
In June. I don't know. I'm just going down the line here.
Okay.
Focusing on. Okay, so rather than focusing on the problem at hand, which is all this those riots and everything, government started to reopen their countries. Okay, so we're talking about worldview here. Is everybody's starting to open back up?
Now, guys, I do acknowledge this, and this is trying to be as neutral as possible on this topic. The places we read these articles from, or these stories or these timelines from, they are going to have a belief one way or the other. That does not necessarily mean that it's our belief. We are just reading verbatim off this list. So don't come in here thinking that we have the same view as however they word this. It's just a way for us to reference. FYI, there's our little plug for neutrality. There you go.
So different countries started opening up. Next thing, Kim Jong-un died, but he didn't really, is what it says.
He faked his own death.
Yeah. Now we're into June.
Which, on to that topic about other countries opening back up. I have a buddy that's in Ireland, and that is a totally different way of the way they look at the world, because part of it's still connected to the UK and the other part of it's like its own little thing. It's like North and South Ireland. I'm not going to get into an Irish debate for anybody here, but it was interesting to hear what's going on over on that side of the globe. Like, because we hear everything from America's standpoint of like what's all going on here, but then I could hear from the European guys what's going on in their country, because they were a lot more strict because they had less area to cover than we did in America. And I'm not for or against that. I'm just saying that's what happened over there, and it was a very interesting progression to listen to.
Yeah, one thing for sure that I do really want to do, and I don't know if we'll be able to do it, other than getting maybe your friend on here or whatever, is like I want to hear an outside perspective of like just not necessarily like factual, but just for entertainment value. Is I want to know if people from other countries hear about the news from America and they're just like,
I can get a guy.
What a shit show!
I can get a guy.
Like, do they look at it? Is it kind of censored where they're like, okay, yeah, they're just doing their American thing, or they're like, that place is falling apart?
I can get quite a few guys that are from different countries if you'd like, since I know a few now, streaming. But anyway, so that happened. Didn't die. Shocker.
Mm-hmm. Protests continued with anger continuing to rage across the world. The United Kingdom, Germany, South Korea, two kinds of lists that have seen thousands of people take to the streets to fight against racial inequality.
Okay.
That one I didn't really know, as I didn't know that was a worldwide thing. I thought that was kind of just in America.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then they started ripping down all these statues.
Yep, saw that. Which, yeah, I'm not gonna get it. I have my opinion, but we're gonna keep going with the list. At this point, guys, I was working up north while he's looking for stuff on the list. He was, and I was seeing all this stuff on social media. And to be honest with you guys, I got off social media, and that's my personal belief, was because I was on social media. I enjoyed the outlook. I was just on Facebook for the most part, and then I decided to just delete the app off my phone. And for you guys that, as I say this, going onto a social media platform, I kept YouTube and my podcast that I wanted to listen to, but I got rid of social media on my phone for about 2-3 months. I was telling him about it and Joe about it, and it was a great experience. For those of you guys who haven't ever done that before, I would recommend just taking a week where, if you don't want to get rid of the social media, like your platform altogether, what I would say is take it off your phone for like a week and check it on a Sunday or something. And I did that, and I felt 10 times better than what I did anyway. Now I still watched YouTube, I still listened to podcasts, but I just wasn't on the social media space, specifically Facebook. I'm not anti-Facebook. I'm just telling you guys if that's something. And I know Joe here hasn't been on Facebook in 5 years.
Yeah, I've never had a Twitter, I've never had an Instagram, any of that. And yeah, maybe 5-6 years ago, something like that, I was on Facebook on my phone. It was like 5 minutes where I was just scrolling through it, and I didn't find a single thing on my, I can't remember what it's called, wallpaper, thread, whatever you call it.
Your news feed.
Yeah, I didn't find a single thing on there that I wanted to click on and spend any time looking at. And I was like, this is the worst way I can spend my time.
And now,
like, I love to get sucked down rabbit holes. I love it. You know, I will read
YouTube.
I watched 3 hours of videos the other night on the importance of not pre-washing your dishes before you put them in a dishwasher.
Can you send those to me so I can show them to my wife?
I'll explain it in just a second. But so I spent like 5 minutes just scrolling through that thing, and I was like, there's no point. There's no point in this. And it was just other people's dramas. And at this point, I was dealing with a lot of things. I was still in the military. And I saw people like complaining about their life, like, oh my God, my life is so hard. I had to get up at 6 o'clock this morning. And it's just like, dude, there's people out here that are fucking doing way more than you for way less money, and they're not complaining. And I was pretty, I guess you could say I was butthurt about it, but it was just like, this is stupid. So then I didn't delete it. It's out there floating around. But I haven't been on Facebook in like 6 years, 5-6 years, something like that. And I can tell you 100%, there has not been a single day since I stopped using Facebook where I was like, damn, I wish I had Facebook. Not a single day. I have never looked back and wanted to get back on Facebook.
Yeah. So that was something interesting, guys, that I did there, and it was really nice. And the main reason I got back on social media on the different platforms, and you'll see it when you look up our different socials and stuff, or if you follow it down that rabbit hole of our content, is because he doesn't want to do a lot of social media, and that's totally fine with me. I can do the social media side, but I ramp back up my social media usage, except for Facebook. I have a Facebook. I don't really use it much. I use it for like family stuff, to like post stuff that's going on in my family for my relatives and stuff that are far away, but I don't scroll Facebook hardly at all. But basically the reason we got back into social media was because the Twitter page, the Instagram, all the stuff that we linked down in the bio, that stuff is for the gaming channel, or this podcast, this community that we're building here. And that's why, so I can interact with you guys, and we can have, and through me, he will get the feedback and the knowledge. He just doesn't, I don't expect him to check the social media stuff. And if you guys have questions for him, just at me on any of the socials and they will get to him. I guarantee it, because we talk almost every day.
For sure.
But anyhow, moving forward, the social media.
Go ahead. Washing machines.
Oh yes, this is important. I want to hear this.
So the detergent, apparently, the detergent is designed to latch onto food particles, and then and by doing that, it gets up underneath it and cleans the plate off or bowl or whatever. But if you pre-wash it and you don't have any food particles or residue on there, then it doesn't really latch onto anything. Now, washing machines get pretty goddamn hot, so it's gonna burn off whatever germs there are. But the idea is that if the detergent is designed to latch onto food and clean your stuff that way, but there's no food to latch onto, then it's not going to clean as effectively. Apparently, this is what 3 hours of YouTube rabbit holes has taught me. So,
and these are some of the conversations you guys are going to get to hear. This is we've been talking about this idea for a long time, because me and him will have conversations when we're driving or whatever. And if you guys enjoy this stuff, please leave a like, follow, all that other good stuff down there. What's next on our timeline?
Puerto Rico got hit with all those earthquakes.
Okay.
And then locusts were swarming in the Middle East. So I remember when that was all going down, a whole bunch of we'll say religious fanatics were going off about the end times.
It's going to be the end of the world, and that's it. That's all we got.
We got a pandemic going on. We've got earthquakes. We've got locusts. Which, if you start talking about locusts, that's extremely biblical.
Yeah.
You start talking about like locusts swarming and whatnot. That's like a big staple.
Oh yeah.
When reading the Bible. So a lot of people were going crazy thinking like that's the end of the world is coming because of these locusts and earthquakes and all kinds of stuff. Then there was a well-known missing person case found its way to the press again, but died down quickly when people started accusing the government of using it as a distraction tactic. Okay. I don't remember hearing about that. So
I don't either. I'll just keep on going then.
It says Karens and Ken started finally getting called out for their shit.
I love it.
I didn't know there was a male version of Karen.
It's called a Ken. It's called a Ken.
Nice.
If you're a Ken, I'm sorry, dude.
It's got the picture of that dude in that pink polo wearing, defending his home.
Yes, nice. So Kens out there, I know there's not going to be any Kens named for like the next 30 years now because of this trend, but that's all right. That was funny with the Karens and the Kens. Just quick PSA, don't be a Karen or a Ken. There you go. There's my bit on that. And everybody's got different definitions of Karens, but when they came out with that was probably one of the funniest things that in my opinion, social media come out with was a name for the trolls. Like the female trolls and the male trolls. Just instead of trolls, because like trolls gave it like it's under a bridge, we get it. They're little hobbit things that hang out and they type in your chat or whatever. But giving it a name like Karen or Ken, like that just gave it like a solidification of don't be a Karen. Like it's now a phrase in the world, and that's something to me is always cracked me up about social media is the things that take off and that don't.
It's funny to me how people have evolved into getting offended. And there's people out there that get offended by getting called a Karen, and it's like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. Like nobody likes being called names, sure, but like you gotta laugh at it. You know,
Yeah.
it's obviously something that was born on the internet. You know, you're
Right.
not gonna get. It's not gonna get to the point where you get Karen tattooed on your forehead.
Yeah.
You know, that's not something that's going to happen.
Right.
But yeah, it's funny. It went too far, but it's funny.
The other funny thing about this,
Then
guys, is that as far as the podcast goes and listening to this, is me and him have a very similar belief in the whole like you are allowed to have your feelings or whatever, that's fine, but your feelings don't like start and stop where mine end, I guess. Like you're allowed to feel the way you feel, but at some point,
phrases, my freedoms don't end where your feelings begin.
right? And I mean, you guys are allowed to feel and be however you want. We're not judging you here, but at the same time, like me and him have kind of the same like suck it up attitude for a lot of stuff. So that might show through in our content. But there's your warning.
Which I'm not opposed to talking about any kind of a topic. If somebody watches this and they're like, "Hey, man, I want to hear your thoughts about um, transgenders," you know, like we'll
Yeah.
talk about it all day long. I don't care. I will talk about it until I'm blue in the face. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't matter to me. But if you specifically want me to talk about it, I'm going to give you my opinion about it.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a neutral topic anymore.
Most of my opinions are very free. So I've recently adopted this new, and this is as deep as I'll get into it for right now. My recently adopted political view is based upon individual freedoms. You know, it's like if you're a dude and you think you should be a girl, be a girl. If you're a dude and you like dudes, marry a dude.
Yeah, okay.
If you feel like you're being treated unjustly, do what you can to change it.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm an average American white guy. You know, that's as plain as it is. I'm a blue collar worker. I go to work every day. I work for my money. I buy what I have. I don't go out of my way to affect other people.
Yeah.
And that's the way that I want most things to be. Is I just want to be left alone.
Mhm.
I'm not the guy out there that's promoting any kind of a political party. I'm not the guy out there speaking against different people. Like if that's the way you believe, that's the way you feel, that's what you believe, then go with it.
Right.
But what I don't like is when it starts affecting me when I haven't done anything.
Right.
Nobody is a fan of mass punishment. And you know, like the perfect example is like back in your school days is like
The kid that didn't run.
do what?
The kid on the soccer team that made everybody else run.
Yeah, something like that. Or like one kid in class is, you know, the class clown, which was me, is
Oh yeah.
is cutting up and distracting the class. So then the teacher takes away their recess privileges or something like that. It's like the whole class is getting punished because of one kid.
Right.
Which I understand trying to control groups of people. That's a method, that's a way to do it. But when it comes to like countrywide stuff like that, it doesn't work. The only thing it does is it creates animosity and it divides a country as a whole. You know, and that's kind of as far as I'll get into it. I don't really want to get into it much more than that. But if somebody's watching this and they want me to talk about something or want Garrett and I to talk about something or anything like that, I have no problem with that. We'll talk about it all day long.
Yeah. So what we got next? We're getting toward the end of the summer, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we're getting towards the end of this recap because not a whole lot happened towards the end of the year. Experts warn the world of a second wave on the brink of coming, and that's when that's in late June.
Okay.
And that's when I think masks started becoming a big deal.
Yep, I remember that.
June. That's where everybody had to wear a mask, and you couldn't go into places without wearing a mask.
They shut down a bunch of places. Everybody had to be homebodies, and the extroverts were dying. Not dying like literally, but they were wanting to be outside with their friends and stuff like that. Which led to the takeoff of, for a lot of people, on the video game world. That's that second wave thing is really what kicked off the big.
That's kind of when we started doing that.
I'm gonna tie into what we do right there, because that was kind of the part of the recap where I thought we kind of picked up as I started telling you about Twitch and how we knew about Twitch. Our younger brother was on Twitch. it is what it is. Like, we watched him play, but we never were like involved in Twitch and watching other people play games. And then me and you started watching some people play, and we started getting involved, and we started looking into it, and we're like, we had this, we were kicking around the idea of doing this podcast. We're kicking around the idea of doing a YouTube channel and all this other stuff. And everybody has, this is the other thing, is everybody has a bunch of ideas until it's time to actually do it. There's a life quote for anybody who wants one. Me and you were like, I was like, man, maybe we should do this. And then like, we didn't really kick it off until actually September. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit. Yeah, the streaming. I'll jump ahead till September then. But unless you, what else you got for the summer? We'll get to that here in a second.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we get there. It says July was pretty tame. There wasn't a whole lot going on. There was some shit going down with Russia. They're accused of putting bounties on U.S. troops.
Putin fishing shirtless in a river on a bear.
And then they were paying extremist groups to kill British troops.
Damn. Okay.
Which I don't know if that was found to be true or if that was kind of just an allegation. I don't remember. But doesn't matter. Okay, whatever. That's pretty politically charged. It's talking about Putin, and it says, but that doesn't matter because that's Trump's bestie.
Yeah, so there you go, guys. Politically charged post. There you go.
Yeah. So obviously take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Which is one thing that's irritating as hell to me. So I don't watch the news. I try not to pay attention to it just because there's so much going on. Mm-hmm. But the polarization between political parties is so extreme now. It started with Obama. I can't remember what disease there was.
Swine flu.
Was it the swine flu? Yeah, I think it was the swine flu. Where it was like, do you have it? And it was like,
people start reporting their neighbors.
Have you been around somebody that had? It was like a questionnaire, like yes or no, like you follow it. And it was like, do you watch CBS? Yes, you have it. Do you watch CNN? Yes, you don't have it. You know, like I remember reading that. That was pretty funny. But that's kind of where the political polarization started, and now it's disseminated into news networks. Where like, I can't even watch the news or read anything on the internet and be like, okay, yeah, that's probably true, because you never know. Even if something's advertised like, no, we only sell the facts. It's like,
not really.
But you know, and then the only thing you can do is read 4 times as much. Read the same story 4 times on 4 different pages.
Right. You don't want to do that.
And try to connect the dots. But then they're all going to be slightly different. Mm-hmm. And then you have to figure out what differences are true and what aren't.
You have to put all the work in to figure it out. It's at that point, it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, and so I just do my best to not pay attention. Elon Musk with SpaceX sent 2 lucky guys into space to get away from all the crap happening down here.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing some good things.
Kanye West attended his first ever rally to endorse himself as a president.
I got nothing for that one. I really don't. Like, it's funny, but I got nothing as far as...
He ended up having a major mental health breakdown. He admitted he was going to kill his own daughter, which is pretty extreme.
I don't remember that happening. Okay. Doesn't mean it didn't, but I remember it happening.
Ranting and raving on Twitter about, I really don't care. I really don't care about.
Yep.
And that's only 5 days until August. We're already done with it. Oh, then there was a huge explosion.
Yeah.
The ammonium nitrate explosion has just hit Beirut.
It like decimated that whole like area.
Yeah, I remember watching that. I can't remember what I was watching it on, but it was just this giant plume of smoke, and then it detonated. Yep. The only thing I can remember is I was like, that looked like a bomb.
Yep.
Like that looked like a massive bomb. Like there's videos that were close enough to where I was like, obviously that wasn't any kind of a nuclear device or anything like that. But I was like, that's not good.
No,
and I know there was talks about whether it was a terrorist attack or not. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was. I think they found out it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, but it hit the news. Like we looked it up at work. Sure.
Yeah, I watched a bunch of different angles of that video, and I felt for those people, man. I watched that thing go off, and like shit just hitting the fan. And I was just like,
Yeah, it's terrible.
I
Terrible
can't
deal.
do anything. I can't do anything about it. But
Yeah, it was a terrible deal.
I felt for those people. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Okay, at this point, we're 4.5 months away from finishing this year. Some good news for you. It says after all this, any good news? It said we're 4.5 months away from finishing this goddamn year.
That's fine because 4.5 months away is when we were 3 months away. But
Larry King died.
yeah, that sucked. I mean, that guy was ancient though, like dinosaur ancient.
I know, but like
It was a big
that guy did a
figure.
lot. If you guys want to do a interesting read on somebody, look up Larry King and read about him.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that does a lot of good, and like his story is very interesting. And I mean, it just you knew who Larry King was. Everybody did. Like hell, they made fun of him in Disney movies. Like
Yeah,
like Robin Williams did a stint in Aladdin, the original one, not this new one with Will Smith, the original one for the people who were born in the 90s, or the 80s, I guess. But yeah, so that was a big deal. I remember when he died, everybody was kind of upset about that. He was a great interviewer too, by the way. Like if you want to look up how to do interviews and stuff like that, watch some Larry King episodes. That guy had it figured out. I mean, he did it forever. And actually, I need to watch some for this podcast too, to be honest, just to learn better interviewing skills and things like that. But we'll have some guests on here eventually. If you guys have anybody you want to, eventually we'll have guests on here. But if you guys have anybody you want to hear us talk with, or that we might know or may not know, comment them down below, and we might try and get some guests on here eventually.
Let's go. This is all about Larry King right now.
Okay.
His daughter passed away.
He was what, like he was gotta be close to his 90s.
I think he was 87.
Okay, hey, that's pretty close guess. Pretty close guess.
Let's see. I'll scroll all the way back up here and set it. Yeah, 87.
Nice. Okay.
Aline died back in 2017. That's not it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is still all about Larry King.
Oh, okay. What are we in, August or September now? August still?
I believe August.
Okay. Anything else happened in August?
Trying to get through this Larry King.
Oh, the whole thing's Larry King? Okay.
I'm still scrolling through Larry King. His final interview. Oh.
Definitely an interesting guy for sure. And then that's the other thing, guys. If you want to learn how to do something, and you're freshly somehow new to YouTube and you're finding this, YouTube is a great resource, but also take it with a grain of salt. Like watch a couple videos. Don't just like watch one video and be like, I know how to do it now. No. Watch some videos. But I mean, you can learn how to do a lot of stuff on YouTube. I learned a lot of stuff for this podcast, a lot of stuff for streaming, all that stuff pretty much on YouTube, and with the help of some other people in real life. But basically, that would be it. YouTube's a great resource to have, and I'm glad that we're finally taking advantage of the platform itself.
Is that it?
Is that the recap? Well, I guess we can do our own recap now.
Let's end this thing with Larry King. I think it ends this thing with Larry King. So I think after that, not a whole lot happened. Obviously, there was the election.
Mm-hmm.
We'll recap some events and then we'll come back to you and me. Yeah. There was more protests, more political animosity. Obviously, the election, and that's other than the election and coronavirus. I don't think a whole lot really happened.
I mean, yeah, things related to both of those. I mean, that was basically all the news was consumed with. Which I mean, I know everybody's tired of hearing about too. So, but yeah, that was basically the end of 2020. I mean, we finished it out. We'll get on to our stuff here in just a second. But 2020 itself in a year was some big stuff happened. Some stuff that changed the world. I mean, for sure, like positive or negative. We're gonna see the after effects here for the next 10 years plus. But it's definitely something to have lived through. I mean, it's luckily we both lived through it, no problem. But there was definitely a year that it definitely changed the way people looked at the way the world could work. Because for a long time we had been living on our normal existence, going along kind of thing, and this kind of shook everything up. But the good news is 2020 is looking really bright for a lot of us.
Yeah, I think my main concern coming out of 2020 with the coronavirus and everything like that is that this is going to become the standard.
Yeah.
So and I don't know all the numbers, so don't quote me, but if you look at the difference between coronavirus and swine flu, H1N1, there was more people affected and more people died from the swine flu in 1 year from the swine flu, right? Than coronavirus has affected and killed in like a year and a half. You know, there's people talking about how it was coronavirus is in the United States all the way back in like autumn of 2019 or something like that.
Yeah.
True or not, I have no idea. But the swine flu killed a lot more people. And it was a lot worse. Like there were people, like obviously there's people dying from coronavirus. I'm not taking away from that. But like regular middle-aged healthy people were like, there's 3 guys that I work with right now that we were talking about this. One of them ended up having to have surgery to remove scar tissue from his lungs.
Damn.
Because he was having issues with that shit like a year later. Wow. And he was like, I couldn't breathe. He's like, it almost killed me. And there was like 3 other guys I work with that were like, yeah, it almost killed me. And they're, you know, regular middle-aged healthy guys. But I would hate to see like another virus or something come through, another pandemic, and then the knee-jerk reaction from everybody going off of what's happened with coronavirus is, oh, we got to shut it down.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that I saw a guy talking about that.
We're going to fade out of wearing masks. We're going to fade, you know, back into opening everything up. And then next year, some disease is going to come along and they're like, shut it down. Everybody wear a mask.
I think we've gone away from that, hopefully, but I do agree that this, hopefully, when they look back in 5 years, we'll realize that this, like I said, Monday morning quarterbacking. But we can't do this again if we have another disease. It functioned through the first time. And by function through, I mean everybody has their own thing still going, but the economy is taking a massive hit from this.
Yeah.
And also another thing, a positive, I wouldn't say a positive, there's nothing really positive about Corona, but you can find positives in some things. What I will say is that a lot of kids in high school now are realizing what jobs are essential and what jobs are not essential. And so I think that in the next coming years, we're going to see a lot more push to get back into the trades, which is kind of what the trades needed, honestly, because we were lacking. Me and you both know this. There's a million trade jobs open every year that are unfilled. And I mean, I'm not pro COVID. All I'm saying is that it showed kids in high school what jobs got to keep going to work. Me and him got to keep going to work. I'm a pipe fitter and he's a lineman. I mean, the world needs our trade to keep running for sanitation reasons and power reasons. And I mean, that's kind of something, if you're looking at a job and you're like, I kind of want to do this. Well, the world shuts down again. I want to have a job where I can keep going to work. Also, you can see Captain in the bottom corner of the screen right there with big ears.
Everybody. Come here. Where? Yep.
And intro Captain. There he is. There's our big guy.
Yeah, so to go along with what you were saying is me and my wife and you and your wife are all very fortunate that we were able to continue to work through this. Right. So I know tons of people that were okay. I know tons of people that, you know, were staying at home and couldn't work. I mean, there was a guy I was talking to the other day. I was at his house hooking up some drops to his house, but
there's the other dog, Morgan.
He's a professional skydiver or something like that. So I don't know.
How do you get
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but he was telling me he's been out of work for like 6 months. So he went and got his drone pilot license because he's going to try to do something with that. So what this guy's motivations are, you know, where they should be, or if he lost his job because of COVID, I have no idea.
Right.
The point is that me and my wife have good jobs and we've been able to work through this pandemic. You and your wife have good jobs and you guys have been able to work. So we've both been very fortunate to have, what are they calling it? Essential jobs.
Essential jobs.
You know, and I would hate to see that come around again.
Yeah.
Be like, you got a new disease, shut it down. And then all these people are out of work again. Because I think there's plenty of people that didn't make it through this pandemic without, you know, being in serious financial turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
and then there's plenty of people that just barely made it through.
Right.
So if it happens again, I don't know how that's going to turn out.
Right. And that's kind of the thing with that. So I mean, and everybody, you see the essential workers thing, and hopefully the country doesn't do this again where we shut down just for a problem. But and I understand it was a massive problem, but irregardless. So now we're gonna get to September when we started doing this whole social media thing. This is kind of the end of the year recap for us too.
Right.
We started streaming. I started streaming on September 18th of 2020. I remember that because I got laid off from one contractor and I had the next day off on a Friday, which layoff to you guys who aren't in the union just means that I'm going to find another contractor. The hall will tell me where to go on Monday. And so I started streaming. I streamed, I believe it was Assassin's Creed Odyssey was my first stream. I did it for like 3 hours. And I had no camera. I had no microphone other than the one I'm wearing right now. And I had an Xbox. And I had some people encourage me to do it. And I think I had 3 viewers. So I was like, okay, this is possible. All right, we can do this. And so I tell Joe here about this idea, and he just takes off with it. Good to have good friends, everybody, so you're aware, and people who support you, but also people who are willing to tell you the truth if something's a bad idea. And so he came up and he's like, yeah, man, let's do it. And so we've progressed, kind of just to sum it up. We started with the Twitch stream. As followers came, we got camera, we got background, I got a PC. Me and my wife redid our gaming room to now what you see it now. If you the older TikToks and stuff will show that I did it in my living room. And this has been a progression, and Joe's been there for pretty much all of it as the co-host. This is actually one of the few times you catch him on camera because he's not hardly ever on camera.
Yeah, true that. You guys are fortunate. You're fortunate I've been willing to do that. I'll just put like a black screen over my eyes.
Yeah, just so nobody can tell who you are. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm interested to hear your side of the cap of, because I know how it felt for me to go through that streaming roller coaster, but you were the co-host and stuff, and I know this isn't necessarily just strictly a streaming podcast, but I mean, I'd be interested to hear your take on the, because I mean, we've been doing this for 4 months now, and we're now in the podcast world.
Yeah, so the original onset, I think we talked about doing a stream. I think we talked about it like years ago.
Yeah,
back when you and I both lived together, because we're like, dude, we play games together all the time. Why don't we just stream it? Which is an idea. We just never did it,
and we didn't have any time. We were farming.
True that. But now we finally got to the point. I was living where I didn't have any internet, so we couldn't play games together. And then now I'm living here where I have really good internet, so we started playing games together, and we kind of, I think you brought this idea. We're like, hey man, a lot of these people are doing this. I've started watching this one guy. I like what he's doing. I think I want to try it. And I was like, sure, man. Originally it kind of started out for me where it was like, this is a hobby that you want to do. I'm like, this is something that you're really interested, like you're fired up about it, something you really want to do. And I'm like, it doesn't affect me. Like, we're still going to play games. We're still going to do exactly what we do. It's just going to be another facet to it. And so I'm like, let's do it, man. I'm all on board. And then watching the progression of it, it kind of snowballed.
Yeah.
Where at first it was like, which is pretty much what you do with everything. It's like 150% no matter what.
Yeah.
But it started out where you were just playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, like you said, and then we played a couple games here and there. Then you would stream it or whatever, no camera or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're like, dude, I think I'm gonna get this PC. I was like, all right, man. Yeah. Found a good one. Do it, sure. Like, yeah, it's gonna help me edit videos. I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, and then you do that. And then I think it was like a week later, you're like, okay, I got a camera, I got a mic, I got a headset, I got a PC, I got a capture card. I got like 3 sets of LED lights for my game room. I'm moving into the back room. I'm doing all these different things that I was like, I was sitting over here like, one day we're just doing this. The next day it's like,
this is a full-blown production.
This is real. This is a thing now.
Yeah.
He's putting out TikToks. We're streaming, several times a week. And it's like, all right, well, we're in it. Let's do this. And it kind of just snowballed from there, which, I mean, my end of it started out with like, hey, this is something that Garrett's fired up about. Let's do it. It's just something we can do. And then now it's just become a part of it where it's like, we're playing games, we're going to be streaming it. And, most of it's because we're going to do it anyway.
Right.
and now it's just we're putting it out there for other people to enjoy if they want to watch or whatever.
Yeah, and we've grown quite a bit. I mean, about 4 months, we're almost to 200 followers on most platforms, and started this YouTube channel. That was something that we should have done sooner. That was something that Joe recommended that we do sooner, but with the things that I was trying to learn and do for this stream setup, it got pushed to the back burner. So now we're going to be pushing out a lot more YouTube content as these podcasts go, and different things that way, because I've gotten to the point where, and when you're starting streaming, if you're watching this, you get to a point where everything seems like there's a ton of information you have to consume. Pick two things. Pick two things. You go to the two things, and then go to 3 and 4, and then because the first 2 will take care of themselves because you'll find a system for it. And then now we're on to 3 and 4 with this YouTube channel and all the stuff that's going on here. So there'll be a lot more stuff coming out, guys.
You have to evolve. You have to evolve with it. So
yeah,
like we started the streaming thing when there was a whole lot of people that were starting the streaming thing. Like we weren't pathfinders. We weren't figuring this shit out when nobody knew what was going on. Like we followed the trend on it, where a lot of people were going to streaming, a lot of people were on Twitch, and we kind of followed in. And I learned a lot of this when it was like coming to applying to jobs. Is what do you have that sets yourself apart from everybody else?
Right.
And when I went to that lineman college, everybody went to that same college. Everybody had the same certifications. Nobody had any experience in this job other than that. And they had a job fair where a bunch of different contractors and utility companies and light companies came down to show like what positions they have. And it's like, what do you have that sets you apart? So like there was 100 people in my class. I think it was like 98. There was 15 or 16 of us that were in the military. So we were vets. So that was a big deal. So that's something that set us 16 above, the other, was it like 85 people? And but then it's like, how do I differentiate myself from them? I paid extra money to go to like this crane course. So I have a crane license that I'm never going to use. There's a smart grid course that I'm probably never going to use.
Right.
It's good knowledge, but it's just these little things to set yourself apart. That's where we're at now with this streaming thing. Is like, okay, we've been doing Twitch, we've been streaming. You're putting out TikToks, and that's what everybody else is doing. So what's next?
Yep.
We've been longtime fans of Neebs Gaming, and they put out these long videos and these episodical,
gameplay
playthroughs of these games. And we're like, man, that's pretty cool. Let's try that. So that's kind of what we're on to now, is starting to do more of like a TV show episode thing going on with Sea of Thieves.
Yep.
And it's just the evolution of it. So now this podcast is kind of it's not completely tied to streaming, but it's like another facet of what we're doing with like content creation.
Yeah.
And so we're just evolving with it. And that's just the way it goes, is everybody starts at the beginning, and then now you move on to the next bigger thing.
Yeah.
So I think next year I'm going to run for president. I think that's what's going to happen.
It might as well, because you got another 3 years to wait. So, I mean, that'd be good for you. 3 years to wait for that. Also, guys, if you're watching this and you're at this part, because we're talking, I'll put a chapter in for content creation kind of stuff, recap, but the timeline you put on yourself is the timeline you put on yourself. I know that sounds like the most basic statement ever, but Joe can attest to this. Like, I'm like, I got to get this out. I got to get this out. I got to get this out. And I have to do this by this day. And I have to do this by this day. And he looked at me dead in the face when we were playing, or not dead in the face, but he looked at me when we were talking on a game, and he goes, "Who set the timeline?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Who set your timeline? Like, when does it have to be out by?" I'm picking this day. Okay, so basically his point being is it's an arbitrary date that you made up in your head that something has to be done by. It's better to get it done and do it right and also just put it out there, than to sit there and obsess over a timeline and a date, and it has to be perfect. And none of this is going to be perfect, guys. Like, this podcast is not perfect, the first full-length episode we've done, but it's going to get better, and that's part of it. So remember that. The timelines are the ones that you put on yourself. Unless you're getting paid, which, if you're getting paid, kudos.
Yeah, and to tie into that, it's going to be as successful as you want. So if you put timelines on yourself, like, hey man, I streamed Saturday, last Saturday, I got this video I need to edit, I'll get it done this week. And so you streamed 2 weeks ago and you're putting out a video 2 weeks later. Like, obviously that's not really a recipe for success. Whereas if you're streaming tonight, and the next morning you're editing the video and putting it out there. Like, yeah, that's pretty, that's a go getter. You're really getting after it. But how long can you sustain that motivation? Like obviously, like Garrett and I will stream on the weekends, and then we'll stream during the week. Both have full-time jobs. If we stream on like a Wednesday night, that video is not getting edited on Thursday.
No, absolutely not. It'd be a Saturday thing.
Edited on the weekend, and you got to hold yourself to a certain standard where you're like, hey man, I'm gonna give myself 4 days.
Yep.
After every stream, within 4 days, that stream is going to be edited. And a standard timeline, and you got to hold yourself to it. It can't be too extreme where you can't maintain that, and it can't be too lax where you're not really putting anything out.
Right.
So, your timeline is what you make it. Nobody's going to set your timeline. Nobody out here is going to be like, hey man, until you're like really big, then they're going to be like, hey man, where's the next video? Nobody's going to do that. So if you're not putting out content, people aren't going to watch.
Right. And that's the other thing too, is also understand like some streams you're going to do, and I've done this before and I've told Joe about it, is you do some streams and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm not gonna edit this video. This isn't gonna happen. Like, this isn't a stream I want to edit on. There wasn't anything really classy or cool or anything that I want to put out, and that's fine too. But yeah, that's basically our tips and tricks for content creation and our recap of what we learned so far. Unless you have anything else.
No, or like 4 months is pretty much it. It's like, it is what you make it. You got nobody. You're your own boss in this, and you got to hold yourself to a standard. You got to put out the content. You got to do the work. You got to figure out how to do it. And there's plenty of things that we don't know how to do yet that we're going to look back when we figure it out and be like, damn, if we'd have had that figured out at 4 months, dude, sky's the limit,
Yeah. And we're going to keep doing this podcast. We're going to keep expanding the content. So TYR Logic Gaming isn't just going to be a Twitch stream. It's going to be the podcast and YouTube channel. It's going to have many facets to it, and it'll grow. And if you guys hang out for the whole trip, it'll be a fun one to watch for sure.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you guys hanging out today. I think that's pretty much all I had. Do you got anything else?
No, I think it's good, man.
All right, guys. Once again, all of the socials will be linked down below. We usually stream on Fridays, Saturdays, and occasionally Sunday evenings, depending on the work schedule, and then maybe one time during the week. Really trying to work on the amount of time we stream to put more content out for you guys. Streaming's awesome, but if you don't have anything for you guys to watch when we're not streaming, it's kind of hard. So you guys have a great week. Hope to see you guys on the next episode. And once again, I'm Garrett. That's my co-host Joe. And
yeah, appreciate y'all hanging out.
We're TYR Logic Gaming, and hope you guys enjoy the podcast. And we'll see you on the next one.